This is my first attempt at a how-to. So once you lot get used to my horrendous Bristol accent, you might find it useful. Right, tools you're going to need for this job. The first thing I've got is a Solder Pro gas soldering iron, runs off lighter gas. A damp sponge to wipe the soldering iron tip on to keep it clean in between soldering. A pair of side cutters, a pair of pliers, some solder, heat shrink tube of various nice selection there, different colours and different diameters for different wires. And my favourite tool of all, an automatic wire stripper. This one's actually broken at the moment, but I managed to put a screw in the handle because I'm an ingenious little bugger, and we should be in business. And solder, I think I covered that. Right, let's fire the soldering iron up. These are a brilliant bit of kit. It's a good idea to make sure it's full before you start, which I usually forget to do. And I've got to be a bit careful here because I don't want to set fire to the newspaper on the kitchen table, otherwise my missus will shoot me. Right, take a piece of wire you want to, say you've got two pieces, so we'll chop that in half first. Now a little secret I use here when stripping, these will actually strip it in one go, but what I like to do is set it so that it won't pull the core right off. And then what I do is I twist it as I pull it the last bit of the way, and it actually twists the ends of the wire and keeps them nice and neat and tidy. So that's that one. We'll do the same on this one. Twist it and pull it off the last bit. Right, so you've got your two pieces to join together. I usually tin both of these first. Tinning involves basically just coating the wire with solder so that it in effect seals it. We'll see if this soldering iron is up to temperature in a minute. It doesn't take long with gas. Yeah, we're more or less there. Right, now what I do is I hold the wire that I want to tin, I let the solder touch it, fiddly, and I just run the soldering iron along the wire like so, and that should be now coated evenly all the way around. That one's not quite coated, so we'll give it a little bit more. You've got to be a little bit careful not to get the iron too hot. I've actually cut this one back a little bit now. I'll wipe the tip off just to get the solder off it, excess solder, and we'll do the same again with the other one. Right, so those are now both nicely tinned, hopefully. And what I usually do is, because that is far too long, is I just nip the end off and probably leave about, ooh, bugger, there goes the paper, leave probably 8 mil, something like that. It doesn't have to be exact, and we'll do the same with the other one. Right, quick clean of the tip again. Now this is handy with this iron because you can actually place it and it will stay where it is. Now something you don't want to forget if you're actually doing a loom, don't forget to put your piece of heat shrink on, because you'll forget. If you do forget, you won't be able to slide it on after it's soldered. So the heat shrink's on the piece of wire. Slide it back out of the way, because if you have it too close to where you're actually making the solder joint, it'll start to shrink the sleeve and you won't be able to pull it on afterwards. Right, I'll put a little dab of solder on the iron. Hold the two together. This is where it'll all go wrong. It's where you need 3 hands. It's quite fiddly, this, especially if you're doing it in a confined space. Yeah, this is right. Let's clean that off again. Right, Ideally you want to, usually you'll find that one of the wires is held firm by the loom and you can just touch the other one against it. Right, so we'll touch those two together. And once they're together, that's not a brilliant joint. I wouldn't be happy with that if I was doing it. I could probably do it better than that. But as you can see, the wires are now together. What I usually do as well is just get me a pair of ordinary pliers and just squeeze the ends so that it gives a nice clean splice. Heat shrink sleeve over the joint, and then basically just run the iron underneath it, just turn it slightly, and there you have a perfectly soldered joint. If you use crimp connectors, the wires can fracture if they're not crimped properly, and you'll end up with breaks in your loom and all sorts of nasty things happening, fuses blowing, bike knots starting, indicators and lights not working. So there we go. Quite simple. Another way of doing it, which that is how I normally do it, but another way would be to strip that one, strip that one, and probably quite fiddly this, but it will work. Twist the joint together. Actually, I think I might try this method in future because it does work quite well. And then again, just run the solder along the joint. I haven't put any heat shrink on here just because it's a demonstration, but there you go. A nice neat joint. It's not always possible to do that because sometimes you're working in a very confined space, so it's a bit fiddly. Try not to keep the soldering iron on it for too long because it'll start to melt the insulation back. It'll go soft, you'll burn your fingers, etc. But there we go. That's how you solder. Don't forget to turn the iron off because you don't want to burn the house down. And I usually just give the tip a quick wipe over to get all the excess solder off before I put it away. Okay, there you go, that's it.